Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Tuesday, April 29th. It's Alissa Coram here, and we saw stocks rallying on a done trade deal. We're hearing some headlines out of the White House. So, joining me now to discuss today's action and a couple of stocks to check in on is Ed Carson, IBD News Editor. Ed, what do you have for us?
Ali, I have Charles Schwab, Guidewire, and Brinker International.
Okay, sounds like a plan. We'll take a look at those stocks. But first, as always, let's check in on the major indexes. So, taking a look at the NASDAQ, up about 0.6% by session's close. Same for the S&P 500, a gain of about 0.6% on the day. So, we're racking up quite a win streak here, it looks like, Ed. Meanwhile, the Dow up 0.75% on the day, and the Russell 2000 up 0.5%. So, what do you make of today's action?
Yeah, I mean, we keep on making progress. We've had a follow through day, and we've continued to make gains. It would have been fine, I think, if the market had gone sideways, recently. That would have been constructive as well. But nobody's going to be arguing against the market continuing to rise. S&P and the Nasdaq, in particular, are moving up toward the 50-day line. I think that's obviously a key level. Doesn't have to go above it right away, but just eventually you'd want to do that. The S&P and Nasdaq, in particular, seem to be living above their 21-day lines, so that's a positive. We're seeing more stocks acting well. So a lot of positive out there. The news you're saying, the done deal, is that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick came out this afternoon and said that there is a done deal, but it's not done deal. It seems like it would be, that the country needs to formally approve that.
Right.
Didn't name the country. There's a lot of speculation that it's India, because other Trump officials have said India's close, and there's a lot of reasons why you might think that India would be able to
Mm.
reach a deal where other countries might not. And there was other news that Lutnick also confirmed that auto tariffs are going to be eased somewhat further. It's a little complicated, but basically, sounds like there'd be a little bit of easing on that front. So some positive trade news. That positive news on positive market action continues.
Yeah, we'll take those wins, and now the S&P up 6 days in a row here, Ed. And just to underscore some of the technical points that you were making, we now have 3 days with the low above that 21-day line. So space, like you said, we're living above that level. 3 days with the low above that level, and we closed up today. That's something that IEBD senior market strategist has been looking for as a signal that maybe we could see this develop into something more. But like you said, that 50-day looms large. Let's check in on where we're at versus the 10-week line to add some perspective. Slightly different calculation there. The S&P is about 0.4% above its 50-day line, or sorry, 10-week line, that is. And the NASDAQ is 0.7% above that 10-week line, even though it still has that hurdle on the daily chart to climb above.
Absolutely, that's a good point. But yeah, so we're just showing a lot of strength. Again, there's still the potential for news that sends the market flying higher or tumbling, and that's just with the normal tariff news. We got a lot of headlines and like earnings. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of tomorrow. We have we barely even talk about this anymore. We have GDP data, which is a little. There's some screwy stuff in this one, and there's also though the March PC inflation report. We have Meta and Microsoft tomorrow. There's a lot of news that's coming out that even aside from tariffs, we'd be looking at, boy, as this market faces, there's a lot of uncertainty in this short term. So anyway,
Yes.
but right things are going well.
Yeah. The other risk, in addition to that 50-day line, is also just the fact that we are now getting somewhat short term extended. You will see that at times in the early stages of a recovery after a correction. But if we are overbought here, maybe we are getting close to an area where you would think, at least from a technical perspective, we could pause, digest a little bit, but we'll have to see what the headline flow is like this week. Lots to digest there.
Yeah, and just one last point. It's just this is where we talk about adding incrementally, because
Yeah.
it's like, what if the market falls off, has a pretty bad day tomorrow, falls 1.5%, and some growth stocks fall 4 or 5%. So if you loaded up on that today or the close or early tomorrow, you could get hit pretty hard. But if you do it incrementally, it doesn't take much to get up there. I mean, some people could easily be, 40% or even more easily without being that aggressive. So just that's why we keep in mind, there's always that potential. You want to be protecting yourself, take steps, but sort of go into the pool, and as long as the pool seems comfortable, just keep on going in, but don't have to jump right in.
Yeah. Okay, and we did see blue chips outperform a little bit here today. Was there anything notable to you about the Dow performance today, Ed? Any of the holdings of interest?
No, there was things that were moving up in there. I don't think there was really specific. Like Visa is one that is reported after the close that we're setting up, but we'll see how that goes. But that wasn't really moving. But a lot of the stuff are still down deep.
Mhm.
But it's nice to see the Dow there. But the Dow and the Russell are still further away from. They have more work to do.
They
It's more
sure
important. We
do.
care more about the S&P and the Nasdaq, and so those are acting the best.
Yes. So just a quick little footnote, quick little mention there for that action. Let's also take a look at the 10-year yields. Ed, give us an update.
This is really nice to see for a couple of reasons. One is the economic data hasn't been great, so that's not just the best thing. But the Treasury markets seem to be acting normally. There was that brief period in early April where things were going a little haywire. Sort of like you get medical readings, like those are not the kind of readings you should be seeing. It's like that raises concern, and so because it wasn't yield just going up, but the market selling off at the same time was unusual. So this is great. It's sort of normalizing. I wouldn't, be fine if the yields go up if the market's taking off. That's a different story. But this is a positive for a variety of reasons. Just nice to see that come down.
Yes, it is. And we also want to check in briefly on Bitcoin. Here's IBIT. Full disclosure, I do have a position. We now have another gain today. It looks like one down session out of the last, 7, 8 days or so. So seeing some positivity here. I know, Ed, you've been really great about talking about the interplay between, hey, is this a representative of risk on? Is this a dollar alternative? So, what are you seeing in Bitcoin right now?
I think it's more going back to that speculative growth situation. For a while there, it sort of rallied because the dollar was weakening, but this seems to be going more towards a speculative play, risk on format. For whatever reason, it's acting well. It may be a little extended if you haven't taken a position already, but maybe it pauses, forms a little handle or something like that. So this is another positive sign that risk is returning to the market.
And gold. We have a decline of just 1% today inside yesterday's bar. We're still hovering near highs, but it seems like this could be a time where we might see a consolidation just because of how big the run up has been lately in gold.
Yeah, and that would be fine. And the next leg, we just don't know. There could be, are we going to be risk off or risk on? And that really comes a lot of that. But consolidating, if you could consolidate these highs, that would be great for gold bugs.
Okay, well, let's check out some stocks of interest, including Charles Schwab. It's on the verge of breaking out of a double bottom buy point. Looks like maybe it closed just a hair above the double bottom entry. Earnings are out of the way here, Ed. So add this to the list of stocks that are breaking out of double bottom basis or in contention to do so this week.
Yeah, so nice to see this move. And you can sort of look at left-hand side. This area sort of there was a lot of resistance sort of near these areas, that base and the prior base, sort of in there. So be great if it could clear this area. It's run up a lot, so it wouldn't be surprising to see this pause a little longer. I thought it was going to, but the market picked up a little bit, maybe on that trade news, and got it to go a little bit more. Yeah, there was probably an early entry that was already there, but the volume hasn't been tremendous the last few days. I think that'd be one of the bigger negatives in this run, but the relative strength line is at 11-month high. So it's not a blue dot because it wasn't a 52-week high, but it's the highest since mid-May. So
Mhm.
it's a consolidation high for sure. The earnings have been strong the last couple quarters. It's supposed to be strong in 2025. So there was some weakness for a while in the earnings, but those seemed like it should be turning around. So maybe after a pretty weak performance, let's face it, for the last few years, relative strength wise, it has improved somewhat last several months, but maybe it's ready to do a more serious outperformance if those fundamentals are there to drive it.
Yeah, a little bit of a turnaround situation underway here. So we'll have to see if it can make progress because I think that's another signal that we're looking for. We've seen some stocks breakout. Those breakouts are working. They're adding to the gains. Of course, that does have a lot to do with the improving overall market. The S&P up however many days in a row now, but we want to see the more of that, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, oh, hey, one or two leading names evidence that the market conditions have improved. We want to see more stocks breaking out, right? So we'll have to see how the market treats this one.
Yep.
Okay, next on the list, let's check out Guidewire. This is GWRE. Another breakout stock today, perhaps picked up steam a little bit more as the trading session wore on, up 2.8% on the day. Volume was lacking here as well, but this looks like a clear move above that entry point, Ed.
Yeah, and it was up there for much of the day. So the volume has not been great, but it was also even weaker when it was sort of pausing below the 50-day line. So it's not anemic, in this little run. Yeah, it'd be nice to see more volume. This is going well. Relative strength line is picking up. Earnings have been pretty strong. This fiscal year ends in July, but it's you can see there's a pretty good run of earnings here. This does underwriting for the insurance industry, and software names are doing pretty well right now. They're somewhat tariff insulated, and if you're in a risk on environment, a lot of these have pretty solid fundamentals. This one doesn't have earnings for quite a while, so that's not a risk. So again, another double bottom, acting pretty well in this environment.
Yeah, and I would say that is something to keep in mind because we are in the thick of earnings season. So whether it's stocks that have earnings out of the way already or not due for a while, that's something to note. Also, you want to look at, do you have any competitors or peers or companies thematically that are reporting, even if a stock that is in your portfolio isn't due, it could move potentially in sympathy with some of the other results. So, something that we always have to keep in mind when earnings season rolls around, Ed.
Yeah, it does keep it complicated. Another reason to have a small number of stocks so you can really pay attention and know what's
Yeah.
going on with all of them.
Okay, last but not least, let's check out Brinker International. So, this is on the downside here, Ed. A poor reaction to earnings today, even though it turned in triple digit growth and accelerating revenue here. So, down almost 15% on the day. Quite a disappointment.
Quite a disappointment, and people could have bought as it cleared the 50-day line. You could have seen, I don't know if that was really could have been seen as a double bottom, but there was sort of a double bottom-esque nature to it. But he was right ahead of earnings. And guess what? Sometimes that works. If this had gone up 15%, oh, look how smart I am. And then it's like, there's just that risk and you just don't know. This was looking fine heading there. It had gone on a big run, but it wasn't like this super expensive stock. It, as you say, delivered great earnings. I think the guidance, there might have been some issues with that, but in any case, this is just why you have to be careful. So if you don't have a big cushion, you have decisions to make. I mean, you can, if you let them ride, this is going to happen to you sometimes. There's just no way around it. You're not going to avoid that. So, taking profits, exiting, doing option plays
Mhm.
is just often better for capital preservation. Just disappointing because you didn't, again, this was acting pretty well. Harvest line wasn't at highs, but that's after a big run. It's one of the
Mhm.
big winners from last year,
It was.
and so just uh, just something is that earnings season is always scary, always treacherous. There's going to be a lot of big wins and a lot of big losses on earnings reports.
Yeah, nothing's guaranteed, even for stocks that have had a really great track record from the earnings reaction standpoint and price performance. But okay, Ed. So say someone did decide to hold their position into earnings, you get a gap down in the morning. What's the plan of action? There's a couple of ways to handle it. It doesn't selling doesn't have to be all or nothing, but I think, ripping off the band-aid, making sure you aren't a deer in the headlights, sell some, and then have a level that you're watching. If it undercuts that, sell some more. Maybe if you are a patient investor, you can wait to sell a final portion towards the end of the day just to see if the stock has recovered. But a lot to consider, Ed, in terms of the strategies that you use to sort of get out of a position when you get a disappointing reaction like this.
Yeah, I mean, you could have waited, I think, after the first 5-10 minutes and then see it breaking down. You probably want to sell a good chunk of it at that point. And I suppose in theory, like it kept on falling. I suppose it didn't undercut the lows from like the first hour again, but it does feel like it didn't make a huge bounce either. It feels like this would
Mhm.
have been one to exit completely by the end of the day. I mean,
Right.
yes, anything can turn around, but it's going to need repair time. And so, yeah, selling at least half or a big chunk, whatever how you do that
Mhm.
is probably just a way to make it easier to get that ball rolling. If things turn out work out, that's great, but it also makes it easier to sell the rest because you've already sold it maybe at a little better price.
Yeah. And I guess when I say wait till the end of the day, it's more so in this situation to see if you can just get a better exit price,
Yeah.
right? So, all right. Well, speaking of earnings, let's briefly check in on a couple of stocks with results out after the close today. You mentioned Visa previously. We'll circle back to that. It looks like as of this moment, the stock is up about 2%. Do you have any intel for us, Ed? Are the results
It
out
beat
yet?
views.
Okay.
That's about all I know on this one. So we'll see if there's some details, but you could argue there's 351. You could probably argue as a buy point. That downward sloping trend line now that earnings out of the way, so it feels like it could have a buying opportunity tomorrow. We'll see how it opens tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. And let's also take a look at BKNG. This is Booking Holdings down a little over 4%. So the early reaction here on the negative side.
Yeah, and a lot of travel stocks are not doing well, so this one's sort of been standing out a little bit, but I'll see how that goes. Another name out there is Stride LRN.
Sure.
That's been doing very well. That one beat views. Looks like this one may try to break out. We'll see about that tomorrow, but this has been acting well. And there's another one that's not been doing particularly well, but it's a big mover, Snap. They did not have, I think, very good guidance, and they didn't good results. So that one's really tumbling, which is
Mhm.
sort of interesting since we'll have Meta coming tomorrow. Uh, so just something to
Yeah.
note. But yeah, a lot of earnings, huge week this next week or so. Really, just a lot of
Mhm.
reports.
Yeah. And so for those listening to the audio version, beaten down Snap down about 12, 13% or so after hours. And then LRN Stride in that education group, poised for a breakout here, shares up around 4 to 5%, at least as of now. Overnight action doesn't always carry over
No,
to the following session, which you always note in your futures column, Ed. So these stocks, we'll have to watch them tomorrow, especially the ones that have been setting up and potentially poised to become actionable, like LRN and Visa.
yeah,
Okay. Well, Ed, we always appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Good to see you.
thank you very much.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live starting 10 minutes before the opening bell. Investors.com/IBD Live for all the details. We will see you there, and then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.